The world is watching with bated breath as the US-China trade war enters a perilous new phase. What began as a tit-for-tat exchange of tariffs has escalated into a full-blown economic conflict, raising fears of a new Cold War between the world's two largest economies. The stakes couldn't be higher. At risk is not just the global trading system, painstakingly built over decades, but the future of globalization itself. The latest salvos in this dangerous game of economic chicken were fired by Beijing. In response to a fresh round of US tariffs, China announced retaliatory tariffs of its own, targeting a wide range of American goods. The move sent shockwaves through global markets, with stock prices tumbling across the board. Investors are clearly worried that this trade war is spiraling out of control. The economic fallout is already being felt around the world. Businesses are delaying investment decisions, consumers are bracing for higher prices, and supply chains are being disrupted. The International Monetary Fund has warned that the trade war could shave billions of dollars off global growth, but the economic damage pales in comparison to the potential political consequences. The trade war is poisoning relations between the US and China, fueling mistrust and undermining cooperation on critical issues like climate change and nuclear proliferation. Some experts fear that the world is sleepwalking into a new Cold War, one that could be even more dangerous than the last. The current round of tariff escalation began in early April 2025, when the US imposed new tariffs on a range of Chinese imports. The tariffs, which cover goods worth hundreds of billions of dollars, are designed to pressure China to change its trade practices, which the US says are unfair. China responded in kind, slapping tariffs on a similar value of US goods. The US argues that its tariffs are justified because China engages in unfair trade practices, such as intellectual property theft and forced technology transfer. The Trump administration has also accused China of manipulating its currency to give its exporters an unfair advantage. China denies these accusations, arguing that its trade practices are in line with international rules. The US tariffs have already had a significant impact on the Chinese economy. Chinese exports to the US have fallen sharply, and economic growth has slowed. The tariffs have also hurt American businesses and consumers, who are now paying higher prices for a wide range of goods. The trade war is a classic example of a lose-lose situation. Both the US and China are suffering economically, and the global economy is feeling the pain. There are no winners in a trade war, only losers. The stock market's reaction to the latest round of tariffs was swift and brutal. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged over 1,000 points, its biggest one-day drop in history. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq Composite also suffered steep losses. Investors are clearly worried that the trade war is escalating out of control and could trigger a global recession. The stock market is a forward-looking indicator, meaning that it reflects investors' expectations about the future. The sharp sell-off in stocks suggests that investors are increasingly pessimistic about the outlook for the global economy. They fear that the trade war will continue to escalate, leading to higher prices, lower corporate profits, and slower economic growth. The stock market's reaction is a clear sign that the trade war is having a real and negative impact on the economy. Investors are voting with their wallets, and they are sending a clear message to Washington and Beijing: end this trade war before it's too late. China's response to the US tariffs has been carefully calibrated to inflict maximum pain on the US economy while minimizing the damage to its own. In addition to imposing retaliatory tariffs, China has taken a number of other steps to punish the US, including adding US companies to its unreliable entity list. This list, which was created in 2019, targets foreign companies that are deemed to be a threat to China's national security or economic interests. Companies on the list face a range of restrictions, including limits on their ability to do business in China, imposing export controls on key US products. China is a major supplier of rare earth minerals, which are essential for the production of a wide range of high-tech products, including smartphones, electric cars, and wind turbines. China has threatened to restrict exports of these minerals to the US, which would cripple key US industries. Launching anti-dumping investigations into US products, China has accused the US of dumping products such as steel and aluminum on the Chinese market at below-market prices. If these investigations are successful, China could impose tariffs on these products, further escalating the trade war. China's actions show that it is willing to use all the tools at its disposal to fight back against what it sees as US aggression. The trade war is no longer just about tariffs. It is a full-blown economic conflict between the world's two superpowers. Trump administration's response to China's retaliation has been, well, defiant. President Trump has repeatedly insisted that the U.S. is winning the trade war and that China will eventually back down. However, there are growing signs of division within the administration over how to handle the trade war. Some officials, such as Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, are said to be concerned about the impact of the trade war on the U.S. economy and are pushing for a negotiated settlement. Others, such as U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, take a more hawkish view and believe that the U.S. must continue to pressure China until it makes significant concessions. The division within the administration reflects the deep divisions within the U.S. over China. Some businesses and lawmakers believe that the U.S. must take a tough stance against China to protect American jobs and intellectual property. Others argue that the trade war is counterproductive and will ultimately harm the U.S. economy. The Trump administration's handling of the trade war has been widely criticized, even by some within the Republican Party. Critics argue that the administration's approach has been chaotic and unpredictable, and that it has alienated U.S. allies. They also point out that the tariffs have hurt American businesses and consumers. The trade war between the U.S. and China is having a ripple effect across the global economy. Businesses around the world are feeling the pain as supply chains are disrupted and demand weakens. The International Monetary Fund has warned that the trade war could shave 0.5% off global growth in 2025. The trade war is coming at a particularly bad time for the global economy. Growth is already slowing in many parts of the world, and the trade war is adding to the uncertainty and pessimism. The IMF has warned that the global economy is in a precarious state and that the risks of a recession are rising. The trade war is also fueling protectionist sentiment around the world. As the U.S. and China erect trade barriers, other countries are tempted to do the same. This could lead to a fragmentation of the global trading system, which would be bad news for everyone. Section 7. Alliances tested. The view from abroad. The trade war between the U.S. and China is putting a strain on America's relationships with its allies. The European Union, Canada, and Japan have all criticized the U.S. tariffs and have retaliated with tariffs of their own. The trade war is undermining the rules-based international trading system that the U.S. helped to create after World War II. The U.S.'s allies are also concerned about the Trump administration's go-it-alone approach to foreign policy. The administration's decision to withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade agreement between the U.S. and 11 other Pacific Rim countries, was seen as a sign that the U.S. is no longer committed to free trade. The administration's decision to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from the EU, Canada, and Mexico has also strained relations. The U.S.'s allies are caught in the middle of a trade war between the world's two largest economies. They are being forced to choose sides, and they are not happy about it. The trade war is damaging America's reputation and undermining its leadership in the world. Section 8. The high cost of decoupling. The trade war is accelerating the decoupling of the U.S. and Chinese economies. For decades, the two countries have been deeply integrated, with U.S. companies investing heavily in China and Chinese companies buying up U.S. assets. However, the trade war is forcing businesses to rethink their supply chains and investment decisions. Some U.S. companies are moving their manufacturing operations out of China to avoid the tariffs. Others are delaying investment decisions until there is more certainty about the future of U.S.-China relations. Chinese companies are also facing pressure to reduce their dependence on the U.S. market. The decoupling of the U.S. and Chinese economies would have far-reaching consequences for the global economy. It would lead to higher prices for consumers, reduced efficiency, and slower economic growth. It would also make it more difficult for the U.S. and China to cooperate on global challenges such as climate change and nuclear proliferation. Section 9. A world adrift. Navigating the new normal. The trade war between the U.S. and China is a symptom of a larger geopolitical shift that is underway. The post-Cold War era, characterized by U.S. dominance and globalization, is coming to an end. A new era is dawning, one in which China is a rising power and the global order is in flux. The trade war is forcing countries around the world to adjust to this new reality. They can no longer rely on the U.S. to provide global leadership or to underwrite the global trading system. They must find new ways to engage with China and to protect their own interests. The trade war is a wake-up call. It is a reminder that the world is a dangerous and uncertain place, and that the U.S. can no longer be relied upon to be the guarantor of global security and prosperity. The world is entering a new era, and it is up to all of us to shape it.